Venice Beach, California, a small gym 3 blocks from the boardwalk. Present day. The man sitting across from me is 78 years old, his frame still broad across the shoulders despite age, his arms still showing the outline of muscles built decades ago when bodybuilding was his entire identity. His name is Derek Morrison, and in 1967 he was Mr. California, a competitive bodybuilder with measurements that made him a minor celebrity in the fitness world. 6'2", 245 pounds of sculpted muscle, the embodiment of everything the bodybuilding culture of the 1960s celebrated. But Derek didn't ask me here to talk about his competitive achievements, or his physique, or the trophies that still sit in a display case in his living room. He asked me here to talk about the worst day of his life. The day he insulted Bruce Lee at Muscle Beach in front of 50 witnesses and learned in the most humiliating way possible that size and muscle mean nothing without understanding, that bodybuilding aesthetics have no relationship to functional combat capability, that the confident certainty he'd built his entire identity around was based on complete ignorance. Derek's hands shake slightly as he pours coffee. Not from age, though age is a factor, but from the memory of what he's about to describe. 57 years have passed since that day at Muscle Beach, and the shame still sits fresh in his chest like something that happened yesterday. "I was a complete asshole," Derek begins without preamble, his voice carrying the distinctive rasp of someone who's smoked for decades and recently quit. That's the only way to describe it. I saw Bruce Lee on Muscle Beach, this small Chinese guy watching us train, and something about him bothered me. Maybe it was the way he watched, analytical, taking notes, like he was studying specimens. Maybe it was insecurity masked as superiority. Maybe it was just racism, though I didn't have the self-awareness then to recognize it. Whatever the reason, I decided to make him the target of my ego and my mouth. He pauses, drinks coffee, continues with visible effort. I walked over to Bruce and I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You thinking about joining a real gym? Building some actual muscle instead of whatever pretend fighting you do?" And when he didn't respond immediately, when he just looked at me with this calm expression, I kept going. "These muscles," I said, flexing, "this is real strength, not movie choreography, not dancing around in pajamas, real power from real training." Derek's expression shows something close to physical pain at the memory. Bruce asked me, very calmly, if I understood the difference between muscle size and functional capability. I laughed. I actually laughed at him. Told him that physics doesn't care about technique, that 245 pounds beats 135 pounds every single time, that all the kung fu in the world doesn't change basic mechanical advantage. And then, Derek says, his voice dropping, Bruce Lee proceeded to destroy every assumption I'd built my entire life around. Not with anger, not with revenge, with patient, methodical demonstration that muscle without understanding is just meat, that size without technique is just mass, that everything I believed about strength and power and dominance was based on never having encountered someone who actually knew what they were doing. He looks at me directly, his eyes showing the weight of carrying this memory for over half a century. I need to tell this story, not to excuse what I did. There's no excuse. Not to make myself look better, I can't. But because people need to understand what Bruce Lee really was. Not the movie star, not the legend, but the man who had every right and ability to humiliate me completely and chose instead to teach me. Who could have destroyed my ego so thoroughly I'd never recover, and instead showed me how to rebuild it on something real. Venice Beach, California, Muscle Beach, late afternoon, July 1967. The sun hangs low over the Pacific, casting golden light across the sand and the iconic outdoor gym that has become synonymous with bodybuilding culture. Muscle Beach isn't just a location, it's a pilgrimage site for anyone serious about physical development, a place where legends train in public, where physiques are built and displayed and judged by crowds of onlookers who gather daily to watch giants lift impossible weights. The air smells like salt water and coconut suntan oil and sweat, that distinctive beach-gym combination that exists nowhere else. The sound of waves crashing provides constant background rhythm, punctuated by the clang of iron plates being loaded onto barbells, the grunt of effort as bodybuilders push through heavy sets, the casual conversations of spectators discussing musculature and definition, and who's looking competitive for upcoming contests. Derek Morrison is in the middle of his training session, working chest with his training partner Mike Sullivan, another competitive bodybuilder preparing for the upcoming Mr. America contest. They're both shirtless, wearing only gym shorts, their physiques on full display for the crowd that's gathered to watch. This is normal at Muscle Beach. Training is performance, spectators are expected, physiques are meant to be observed and admired. Derek's chest development is exceptional, even by Muscle Beach standards. His pectorals are thick, striated, the kind of muscular development that takes years of dedicated training and genetic advantage to build. He's benching 315 pounds for sets of 8, the weight moving smoothly through his full range of motion, his form textbook perfect. The crowd watching includes other bodybuilders, fitness enthusiasts, tourists, photographers from muscle magazines documenting the Muscle Beach scene. Among the spectators is a small Asian man in casual beach clothes, white t-shirt, dark shorts, canvas shoes. He's standing perhaps 20 feet from the benching station, watching with focused attention, occasionally writing in a small notebook. His presence isn't unusual. Lots of people watch training at Muscle Beach, but something about his demeanor catches Derek's attention between sets. The Asian man isn't watching with the typical awe or admiration that most spectators show. He's watching analytically, critically, taking notes like a scientist observing an experiment. Derek notices him between his third and fourth set, and something about that analytical observation bothers him. Here Derek is, benching over 300 pounds, displaying musculature that 99% of the population could never achieve, and this small guy is watching like he's identifying flaws rather than appreciating excellence. Derek's training partner Mike notices Derek's attention shifting. "You know that guy?" Mike asks, nodding toward the Asian man. "Never seen him before," Derek responds, racking the barbell after his fourth set. "But he's been watching for 20 minutes, taking notes, like he's studying us or something." "Probably a journalist," Mike suggests. "Asian markets are getting interested in American bodybuilding. Maybe he's writing an article for a Hong Kong magazine or something." But Derek's ego, already inflated from the attention his physique draws, from the success he's achieved in competition, from the constant validation that comes with being objectively one of the most muscular men in California, doesn't interpret the situation that way. He sees criticism in the analytical watching, sees dismissal in the note-taking, sees someone who doesn't appreciate what Derek has built, who doesn't understand the dedication required to develop this level of musculature. Derek finishes his workout, completes his final set of flies, and makes a decision that will haunt him for the rest of his life. He's going to confront this Asian spectator, going to make him acknowledge the superiority of bodybuilding development, going to assert dominance the way Derek has learned to assert it, through display of physical mass and confident verbal aggression. He walks toward the Asian man, his chest still pumped from the workout, his muscles swollen with blood, looking every bit the physical specimen that wins bodybuilding contests. Several other people are nearby, bodybuilders finishing their own workouts, spectators who've been watching the training, photographers from fitness magazines. Derek's approach is noticed, people sensing potential confrontation, attention shifting from the weights to the social dynamics about to unfold. Derek stops directly in front of the Asian man, close enough to use his size for intimidation, his shadow falling across the smaller man's notebook. "You've been watching us train for a while now," Derek says, his voice carrying that performative quality of someone speaking to an audience rather than having a private conversation. "Taking lots of notes? You thinking about joining a real gym? Building some actual muscle instead of whatever pretend fighting you do?" The Asian man looks up from his notebook, meets Derek's eyes with calm attention. No fear, no deference, no reaction to the implied insult. Just present, observing, waiting to see where this goes. That calm non-reaction irritates Derek further. He's used to intimidating people with his size, used to deference, used to his physical presence commanding respect, or at least nervousness. This small man just looking at him calmly feels like dismissal. "I'm not sure what you mean by pretend fighting," the man responds in accented but fluent English. "I practice martial arts. What I'm observing about your training is the relationship between muscle development and functional movement capability." This response, this suggestion that Derek's impressive musculature might not correlate to functional capability, triggers Derek's insecurity masked as superiority. "Functional capability?" Derek repeats, flexing his chest involuntarily. "These muscles right here, 48-inch chest, these are functional. This is real strength from real training. Not movie choreography, and not dancing around in pajamas pretending to fight. Real power built in real gyms." The Asian man closes his notebook. Muscle size and functional strength are related, but not identical. Power generation requires understanding of biomechanics, leverage, timing. Those elements don't always correlate with muscle mass. Derek laughs, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. People are definitely watching now, sensing drama, moving closer to observe the confrontation between the massive bodybuilder and the small Asian man who doesn't seem intimidated. "Physics doesn't care about your biomechanics," Derek declares with absolute certainty. 245 pounds beats 135 pounds every single time. Mass, leverage, basic mechanical advantage. All your kung fu dancing doesn't change reality. "Have you tested that assumption?" the Asian man asks, his tone remaining calm, curious rather than defensive. "Have you actually verified that your muscle mass translates to combat effectiveness against someone who understands movement and leverage?" This question, this implied challenge, is exactly what Derek's ego needs to assert dominance completely. He's going to prove to this small man, to the crowd watching, to anyone who might question the supremacy of bodybuilding development, that size and muscle equal power in any context. "I don't need to test it," Derek says, his voice taking on that aggressive edge that comes from certainty built on never being challenged. "It's physics. It's biology. Bigger, stronger, more powerful. That's reality." One of the photographers present, a man named Jack Chen who works for several fitness magazines and knows both the bodybuilding scene and the martial arts community, recognizes the Asian man. He calls out, "Derek, do you know who you're talking to?" Derek doesn't look away from the Asian man. "I don't care who he is. He's taking notes on real athletes like he has something to criticize. I'm just explaining reality to him." "That's Bruce Lee," Jack says, his voice carrying warning. "The martial artist, from the Green Hornet. He's legitimate, Derek. You might want to reconsider this confrontation." The name means something to Derek. He's heard of Bruce Lee, seen the television show, aware of the growing reputation. But knowing the name doesn't change Derek's fundamental assumption. Bruce Lee might be fast, might know some techniques, but Derek still outweighs him by over 100 pounds of muscle built specifically for maximum strength and power. The size advantage is so overwhelming that technique becomes irrelevant. Or so Derek believes. "I know who he is," Derek says, still not backing down. "Movie Kung Fu. Very impressive on screen with cooperative partners and camera tricks. But this," Derek flexes again, a displaying musculature that took years to build. "This is real. This beats choreography every time." Bruce Lee stands up slowly, pockets his notebook. When he speaks, his voice remains calm but carries a different quality now. Authority. Someone who's about to settle a question definitively. "Derek, I assume that's your name based on how your training partner addressed you. I wasn't criticizing your muscular development. Your physique is impressive and represents significant dedication. What I was noting is that bodybuilding training optimizes for muscle size and definition, not for combat effectiveness. Those are different goals requiring different approaches." "Then prove it," Derek challenges, and he's committed now, his ego fully engaged, the crowd watching, no backing down without looking weak. "If you think your technique beats my size and strength, demonstrate it. Show everyone here that Kung Fu is more than movie tricks, or admit that when it comes to actual physical confrontation, mass wins." Bruce considers this for a long moment. He could walk away, could refuse the challenge, could maintain dignity by not engaging with someone whose understanding is clearly limited. But something about the situation, the public nature, the crowd of bodybuilders who might benefit from seeing their assumptions challenged, the opportunity to demonstrate that functional understanding transcends aesthetic development, makes Bruce decide to accept. If you're watching this story unfold from wherever you are in the world, understanding that 50 people at Muscle Beach are about to witness Derek Morrison's entire worldview get destroyed by someone half his size, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. This moment, this confrontation that Derek initiated out of ego and ignorance, becomes the most important lesson about strength, power, and understanding that anyone present will ever receive. Subscribe to see how championship bodybuilding meets functional martial arts, and everyone present learns the difference between looking powerful and being powerful. "All right," Bruce agrees, "but we should establish parameters. I'm not going to hurt you. You're not going to hurt me. We're demonstrating principles, not trying to cause injury. Agreed?" Derek nods, his confidence absolute. "Agreed. Let's make this simple. You try to move me. Push me, pull me, take me down, whatever technique you want. If you can make me take a step backward or lose my balance, you've proven your point. If you can't, then you acknowledge that size and strength matter more than technique." It's a test that seems impossibly tilted in Derek's favor. He's 245 pounds of muscle with a low center of gravity from years of squat training. His legs are massive, his core is strong, his entire physique is built for generating and withstanding force. Bruce is 135 pounds, looks like a strong wind could move him. The crowd watching understands the physics. This is going to be a simple demonstration of mass and strength overwhelming technique. The crowd has grown to over 50 people now. Other bodybuilders have stopped their training to watch. Spectators from the beach have wandered over, drawn by the gathering crowd and the obvious tension. Jack Chen has his camera ready, recognizing this might be photographically significant. Mike Sullivan, Derek's training partner, is watching with mixture of concern and curiosity. Concern that his friend might be making a mistake. Curiosity about whether Bruce Lee is really as capable as his reputation suggests. They clear space on the sand just beyond the main workout area. Derek plants himself in the center, feet shoulder-width apart, weight-centered, stable. He stood in this kind of position thousands of times, holding heavy weights, resisting enormous forces. His muscular development gives him structural advantages, thick legs that provide stable base, powerful core that resists rotation, overall mass that creates momentum and inertia. Bruce stands facing him, perhaps 5 feet away. To the crowd, the size difference is almost comical. Derek looks like he should be able to simply fall forward and crush Bruce through pure mass. Bruce looks like he should be intimidated, should be reconsidering this challenge. But Bruce's expression shows neither intimidation nor concern, just focus. The same analytical attention he was giving the training earlier, now directed at Derek's structure, his positioning, his assumptions about how force and stability work. "Ready?" Bruce asks. "Whenever you are," Derek responds, his voice carrying that confident certainty of someone who's never been truly tested. Bruce moves forward and places his hands on Derek's chest. Light contact, just fingers touching the massive pectorals that Derek has spent years developing. Derek expects immediate pushing, immediate force, Bruce trying to overcome his stability through aggression and effort. Instead, Bruce's hands just rest there for a moment. Then his fingers move slightly, pressing different points on Derek's chest, his ribs, his shoulders. It feels almost like massage, like Bruce is feeling for something specific. The crowd is confused. This doesn't look like an attempt to push Derek backward. This looks like analysis. "Your structure has a weakness," Bruce says calmly, his fingers still moving across Derek's torso. "You've built enormous muscle, but muscle without understanding of skeletal alignment creates vulnerabilities. Your center of mass is high because of your chest and shoulder development. Your stance is wide, which you think provides stability, but actually limits your ability to adjust quickly to force from unexpected angles." Derek is getting impatient. "Stop analyzing and start pushing. Show me this technique that beats size." "All right," Bruce agrees. His hands shift position slightly, moving from Derek's chest to his shoulders. Then Bruce does something so subtle that most of the crowd doesn't see it happen. His fingers find specific points on Derek's shoulders, and he applies pressure. Not pushing, not pulling, just specific directional pressure at specific angles. Derek's posture shifts. Not dramatically, not with obvious force, but shifts nonetheless. His weight, which was centered and stable, suddenly feels slightly off. He compensates, adjusts his foot position, tries to reset his stability. "Feel that?" Bruce asks, his hands still on Derek's shoulders. "I'm not using force against your mass. I'm affecting your structure. Your body wants to maintain equilibrium. When I disrupt your structural alignment at specific points, your nervous system responds by trying to restore balance. That response is what creates vulnerability." Derek doesn't like what he's feeling, but doesn't fully understand it yet. "Just push me. Stop talking and demonstrate." Bruce complies. His hands shift from Derek's shoulders to his chest, and he pushes. But the push doesn't come from his arms or from leaning his body weight forward. It comes from his entire structure, power generated through his legs and core, transmitted through perfect skeletal alignment into Derek's center of mass. The push isn't enormously forceful in the way Derek expected. It's precise, angled, directed at the exact point where Derek's weight distribution makes him most vulnerable. And suddenly Derek is moving backward, his feet taking a step, then another step, his massive legs unable to prevent the movement because the force is coming from an angle and with timing that his structure can't effectively resist. Derek catches himself, plants his feet, resets. He's stunned. Bruce just moved him. Not through overwhelming strength, Derek could feel that the force wasn't that great, but through some quality of precision and timing that Derek's training never prepared him to handle. The crowd is murmuring. They saw it. 245 pounds of competitive bodybuilder just got moved backward by someone half his size using what appeared to be moderate effort. The physics they thought they understood just got challenged by reality. Derek's ego can't accept this. Lucky angle. Try it again. I'll be ready this time. Bruce resets, hands on Derek's chest again. Derek tenses every muscle, tries to root himself through pure strength and mass. His legs are like tree trunks. His core is tight. His entire body is committed to being immovable. Bruce's hands move again, same precise pressure at specific points. But this time he's also using his footwork, his body position, creating angles that Derek can't effectively defend against, because Derek's training never taught him how to recognize or counter these attacks on his structure rather than his strength. Derek goes backward again, harder this time, faster, his feet scrambling to maintain balance. He doesn't fall. His athletic ability prevents that. But he definitely moved, definitely lost the stability he thought his size guaranteed. "How are you doing that?" Derek demands, frustration clear in his voice. "You're resisting with muscle tension," Bruce explains, his tone patient, educational. Muscle tension creates rigidity. Rigidity is strong in specific directions, but weak in others. I'm finding the directions where your tension creates weakness rather than strength, and applying force there. Your body is like a building that's very strong vertically but vulnerable to lateral forces. I'm exploiting lateral vulnerability. Derek is breathing harder now, not from physical exertion, but from the mental strain of encountering something his worldview can't accommodate. He spent years building the strongest, most powerful physique he could achieve. And someone a fraction of his size is moving him at will, making his strength irrelevant through understanding Derek doesn't possess. Before I continue with what happens in the next phase of this demonstration, with the additional techniques Bruce shows Derek and the 50 witnesses at Muscle Beach, I need to know you're feeling the weight of this moment. Drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from, and whether this confrontation is revealing something unexpected about the relationship between muscle mass and functional capability, between bodybuilding aesthetics and combat effectiveness. Because what Bruce demonstrates in the next several minutes destroys not just Derek's assumptions, but the assumptions of everyone watching who believed size equals power in all contexts. Derek decides to change approach. Fine, you can push me off balance with some leverage tricks, but that's not real fighting. In actual combat, I'd just grab you. Once I get my hands on you with this strength, he flexes his massive arms, your technique doesn't matter. Size and power win in grappling. You believe that? Bruce asks, and there's no mockery in his voice, just genuine curiosity about Derek's certainty. I know it, Derek responds. Grappling is about strength and weight. That's why heavyweight wrestlers beat lightweights. That's why bigger guys dominate in real fights. Your striking might be fast, but once we're locked up, muscle mass is everything. Then try to grab me, Bruce offers. Use your strength to control me, to demonstrate that size dominates in grappling range. Derek doesn't hesitate. He's been waiting for this, for the opportunity to use his strength directly. He reaches for Bruce, his massive arms extending to establish grips that will let him use his size advantage. Bruce's body shifts before Derek's hands arrive. Not jumping away, not retreating, just adjusting position and angle so Derek's grasping hands close on air or slide off Bruce's frame without establishing control. It's similar to what happened with the SEAL commander, with the strongman, with every powerful person who assumed grabbing someone smaller would be easy. Derek tries again, faster, more committed. Same result. His hands get close to Bruce, but can't establish the grips they need. Bruce is moving with minimal effort, just precise positioning that makes grasping impossible. You're running away, Derek accuses, though Bruce clearly isn't running, is staying within arm's reach. I'm evading your grip attempts, Bruce corrects. There's a difference. Running would be leaving the engagement range. I'm staying in range but denying you the control your technique requires. Watch. Bruce allows Derek to establish a grip on his wrist. Derek immediately feels victory. He's got solid hold. His strength can control this now. He tightens his grip, crushing force from hands that routinely hold hundreds of pounds of iron. Bruce's wrist rotates, not fighting the grip with strength, not trying to pull away, just rotating at specific angle. The rotation creates leverage that Derek's straight-line gripping strength can't counter. Derek's powerful grip, which should be inescapable, loses purchase. Bruce's wrist slides free without apparent effort. Your grip is strong in one direction, Bruce explains, closing force, but hands have anatomical limitations. When force is applied at angles that don't align with your grip strength, the grip fails regardless of how strong the muscles are. Derek is getting angry now. Frustrated anger at being made to look weak, at having his assumptions challenged, at 50 people watching him fail to do things that should be simple given his size advantage. Stop running. Stop evading. Actually grapple with me. Lock up. Let me use my strength. Bruce considers this, recognizes that Derek needs a more complete demonstration to understand. All right, we'll lock up. You use your strength to try to throw me or take me down. I'll respond with technique. The crowd can judge who's more effective. They face each other again, and this time when they engage, it's not Bruce evading. They lock up, Derek's hands on Bruce's shoulders and upper arms, Bruce's hands on Derek's massive torso. This is where Derek is certain his advantage will manifest. He's got over 100 pounds on Bruce. His arms are twice the diameter. His strength is objectively greater. Derek drives forward, using his legs and core, trying to overwhelm Bruce through pure force and mass. His intention is to bull Bruce backward, to demonstrate that when strength is applied directly, technique becomes irrelevant. Bruce doesn't resist the forward drive with opposing strength. Instead, his body does something that feels wrong to Derek. It moves with the force, but at an angle, redirecting Derek's linear drive into circular motion. Derek's powerful push, which should have driven Bruce backward, instead rotates both of them, Derek's momentum being used against him. Derek tries to adjust, to use his strength to stop the rotation and reassert control. But Bruce's positioning creates leverage that Derek's strength can't effectively counter. It's like trying to stop a wheel from turning by pushing on the rim. The mechanical disadvantage makes strength irrelevant. They separate, and Derek is breathing hard, his muscular chest heaving. Not from exhaustion, his cardiovascular conditioning is excellent from bodybuilding training. but from the psychological strain of failing repeatedly at tasks that should be simple given his physical advantages. Bruce isn't breathing hard, doesn't appear fatigued, just calm, analytical, ready to continue demonstrating. Jack Chen, the photographer, calls out from the crowd, "Derek, maybe you should stop. You've made your point, Bruce has made his. No need to continue." But Derek's ego won't allow stopping. Stopping means admitting defeat, admitting his assumptions were wrong, admitting that everything he believed about size and strength supremacy is incomplete. No, I want him to show me what he's got. Real technique, not just evading and redirecting. Actually demonstrate this martial arts mastery everyone talks about. Bruce's expression shows something like regret. He didn't want this confrontation, didn't ask for it, has been trying to demonstrate principles without humiliating Derek. But Derek is insisting, and the crowd is watching, and sometimes lessons have to be harsh to be understood. "All right," Bruce agrees. "I'll demonstrate striking, but controlled. I'm not going to hurt you, just show you why muscle mass doesn't protect against precise strikes to vulnerable targets." Derek nods, settles into a position that feels defensive, his massive arms raised to protect his head and body. He's assuming Bruce will strike at muscular areas that Derek's development protects: the chest, the arms, the shoulders, places where muscle provides padding. Bruce's hand moves from his side to Derek's solar plexus. The movement appears instantaneous, no wind-up, no telegraph. The famous 1-inch punch delivered with controlled force to a neurological nexus that muscle development doesn't protect. The impact is precise, sharp, targeted. Derek's eyes go wide, his mouth opens, his hands drop to his midsection. The air has been driven from his lungs, his diaphragm has spasmed. His muscular development, all the core strength he's built through years of heavy squats and deadlifts, provided no protection because the strike targeted nervous system rather than muscle tissue. Derek staggers backward, both hands pressed to his solar plexus, trying to pull in air that won't come. The crowd is silent, watching the massive bodybuilder reduced to gasping helplessness by a single strike from someone half his size. Bruce doesn't follow up, doesn't press the advantage, just waits, gives Derek time to recover. After perhaps 15 seconds, Derek's breathing returns. The spasm releases, function restores. What was that?" Derek asks when he can speak. "Strike to the solar plexus," Bruce explains calmly. "It's a nerve cluster that, when struck correctly, disrupts diaphragm function temporarily. Your abdominal muscles, no matter how developed, don't protect it because the target is neurological rather than structural. This is what I meant about functional capability versus muscle mass. Your body is armored with muscle in many areas, but there are targets that muscle doesn't protect, and if you don't know how to defend those targets, size becomes irrelevant." Derek is processing this, his hand still rubbing his solar plexus, feeling the residual effect of the strike. He's never been hit like that, never experienced that kind of incapacitation from a single blow. His training never prepared him for it, because bodybuilding doesn't address combat, doesn't teach how to protect vulnerable targets, doesn't acknowledge that muscle armor has gaps. One of the other bodybuilders in the crowd, a competitor named Frank Zane, who will go on to win Mr. Olympia multiple times, asks a question that's on everyone's mind. "Bruce, could you have hit harder? Could you have caused serious damage with that strike?" "Yes," Bruce confirms honestly. "That was controlled force, maybe 30% of maximum. Full power to the solar plexus can cause unconsciousness, can stop the heart in extreme cases. I used enough force to demonstrate the principle without causing injury that would require medical attention." The crowd is murmuring. The bodybuilders present recalculating everything they thought they knew about physical capability and combat effectiveness. They've spent years building muscle, believing that size and strength translate to dominance in all physical contexts. Bruce just showed them, demonstrated on their champion, that understanding trumps muscle mass, that technique overcomes size, that knowledge of human anatomy and leverage and timing is more valuable than any amount of aesthetic development. Derek stands there, still recovering, his confidence shattered, his worldview collapsed. 50 people watched him insult Bruce Lee, watched him declare that bodybuilding muscle beats martial arts technique, watched him get systematically destroyed by someone who made his size advantage completely irrelevant. "I'm sorry," Derek says, and there's genuine shame in his voice. "I was arrogant, ignorant. I assumed size meant dominance, that muscle mass equaled combat effectiveness. You just proved I was completely wrong." Bruce's response is immediate and generous. "You weren't completely wrong. Size and strength are advantages. In many situations, your muscular development would give you overwhelming advantages against untrained opponents. But advantages aren't guarantees. What I showed you is what happens when size meets sophisticated understanding of leverage and anatomy and timing. Your muscle is real, your strength is real, but your training didn't prepare you for someone who knows how to neutralize those advantages." "Can you teach me?" Derek asks, the question coming from genuine humility rather than ego. Can you show me how to address these gaps? Not to replace my bodybuilding, but to make me actually functional instead of just looking powerful. Bruce considers this carefully. Derek just publicly insulted him, challenged him, forced this confrontation through arrogance and prejudice. Bruce has every right to refuse, to let Derek carry the shame without offering help. But that's not who Bruce is. I can teach you some principles, Bruce agrees, but you need to understand something first. What I practice takes years to develop. You can't add a few techniques to your bodybuilding and suddenly become a complete fighter. It requires rethinking how you approach physical training, understanding your body as a tool for function rather than just aesthetics. I want to learn, Derek says, and he means it. The humiliation he just experienced, the complete destruction of his assumptions, has created openness that didn't exist before. Sometimes ego has to be shattered completely before real learning can begin. They spend the next 45 minutes on the beach, Bruce teaching basic principles to Derek while the crowd watches. How to stand for stability that can adapt rather than rigidity that creates vulnerability. How to move efficiently, using minimum effort for maximum effect. How to strike targets that muscle doesn't protect. How to defend against grips and holds using leverage rather than strength. Derek absorbs everything, his analytical mind finally directed at understanding rather than defending ego. He's realizing that his years of bodybuilding training, while creating impressive physique, left him functionally limited. Strong in specific movements, weak in others. Powerful in controlled situations, vulnerable when situations don't match his training patterns. The other bodybuilders present are watching with equal attention. Frank Zane asks detailed questions about flexibility and joint mobility, recognizing that his extreme muscle mass might be limiting his functional range of motion. Mike Sullivan, Derek's training partner, asks about integrating martial arts training with bodybuilding, whether the two approaches can complement each other. Bruce addresses all their questions honestly, acknowledging where bodybuilding provides benefits and where it creates limitations. He's not trying to convert bodybuilders into martial artists. He's trying to expand their understanding of what physical capability means, helping them see beyond aesthetics to function. As the sun sets over Muscle Beach, the crowd begins to disperse. Some leave with new questions about their own training. Others remain skeptical, defending bodybuilding methodology against what they see as martial arts elitism. But everyone leaves having witnessed something significant. The day Derek Morrison's certainty about size and strength met Bruce Lee's understanding of leverage and technique, and certainty lost completely. Derek and Bruce exchange contact information. Derek will visit Bruce's school in Los Angeles multiple times over the next year, learning principles that transform his understanding of physical training. He doesn't abandon bodybuilding, continues competing, wins Mr. California again, places well in national contests. But his training evolves, incorporates flexibility work, includes martial arts principles, develops functional capability alongside aesthetic development. We return to present day, to the small gym in Venice where Derek, now 78, finishes his story. That day at Muscle Beach was the worst day of my life, he tells me, his voice heavy with remembered shame. I insulted someone out of ignorance and prejudice, made assumptions based on appearance, believed my muscle mass made me superior to someone who actually understood combat. But it was also the most important day, Derek continues. Because Bruce could have destroyed me, could have humiliated me so completely I'd never show my face at Muscle Beach again. Instead, he taught me, showed me what I was missing while respecting what I'd achieved. That generosity, that wisdom to know when to destroy and when to educate, that changed my entire life. Did you stay in contact with Bruce? I ask. Until he died, Derek confirms. Visited his school probably 30 times, trained with him and his students, learned Wing Chun basics, Jeet Kune Do principles, understanding of body mechanics that bodybuilding never teaches. Bruce never asked me to stop bodybuilding. In fact, he encouraged me to continue, to keep building muscle, but to understand that muscle is a tool, not an identity. He also taught me about humility, Derek says, about recognizing when your understanding is incomplete and being willing to learn from anyone who can teach you something true. I was Mr. California. I had a physique that won contests, but I didn't understand fighting, didn't understand functional movement, didn't understand the difference between looking powerful and being capable. Derek stands, walks to the wall where old photographs hang. He points to one, a picture of him and Bruce at Muscle Beach, taken months after their confrontation. They're both smiling, Bruce demonstrating a technique, Derek attempting to execute it. The photograph shows mutual respect, student and teacher, friendship built from honest testing and generous teaching. This is what I want people to understand about Bruce Lee, Derek says. Everyone knows about his speed, his power, his martial arts mastery. But his real greatness was his character, his ability to respond to insults and ignorance with patience and education, His wisdom to know that destroying someone's ego serves no purpose, but expanding their understanding serves everyone. That's the truth Derek Morrison learned at Muscle Beach in 1967. The truth that 50 witnesses saw demonstrated when a bodybuilder's certainty met a martial artist's knowledge, and certainty got destroyed completely. That muscle mass without understanding is just aesthetics. That size without technique is just mass. That looking powerful and being capable are entirely different things. If this story revealed something about the difference between bodybuilding development and functional capability, about how true masters respond to insults with teaching rather than revenge, subscribe so you never miss these deeper truths. Comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and what this taught you about the relationship between size and skill, between muscle and mastery, between ego and wisdom. Let's build this understanding together, one lesson at a time. The story of Derek Morrison insulting Bruce Lee at Muscle Beach spread through both the bodybuilding community and martial arts world. Some versions were exaggerated, claiming Bruce threw Derek across the beach, claiming Derek challenged Bruce to a real fight and got hospitalized. But the people who were actually there, the 50 witnesses, including respected bodybuilders like Frank Zane and photographers like Jack Chen, tell the truth more accurately. They describe a confrontation initiated by ignorance and arrogance, met with patience and education. A bodybuilder who believed muscle mass equaled dominance in all contexts, learning that understanding beats size, that technique overcomes strength, that functional knowledge matters more than aesthetic development. And they describe Bruce Lee's choice not to humiliate when humiliation would have been easy, but to teach when teaching required more effort and generosity. Frank Zane, in his autobiography written years later, includes a brief mention of witnessing the encounter. I saw Bruce Lee demonstrate principles that changed how I thought about physical training. Before that day, I believed bodybuilding represented the peak of physical development. After that day, I understood that aesthetics and function are different goals. That building impressive muscle doesn't automatically create combat capability. That understanding how the body works matters more than how it looks. Jack Chen's photographs from that day at Muscle Beach were never published in fitness magazines. The editors felt the images, showing a massive bodybuilder clearly being handled by a much smaller martial artist, would upset their readership, would challenge the bodybuilding mythology they were selling. But Jack kept the photographs, and they've since been displayed in martial arts museums as documentation of the moment when bodybuilding culture encountered functional martial arts and learned a humbling lesson. Derek Morrison continued competing in bodybuilding until 1972, when he retired at age 33 with multiple state titles and national placements. He became a personal trainer, spending the next 45 years teaching others. His training methodology was unusual for bodybuilding culture, incorporating flexibility work, martial arts principles, functional movement patterns alongside traditional strength training. His students often asked why his approach differed from mainstream bodybuilding coaching. Derek would tell them about Muscle Beach, about insulting Bruce Lee, about learning the hard way that muscle without understanding is incomplete. He'd show them the photograph of him and Bruce, explain how that confrontation transformed his understanding of physical training, why he now emphasized function alongside aesthetics. Several of Derek's students became successful bodybuilders themselves, winning state and national titles while also being functional athletes who could move well, who understood their bodies beyond muscle contraction, who trained for capability rather than just appearance. They represented Derek's legacy, bodybuilders who learned from his mistakes, who understood that size and strength need to be balanced with flexibility and coordination and functional understanding. Bruce Lee never spoke publicly about the Muscle Beach encounter. When asked about bodybuilding or muscle development, he discussed it philosophically, acknowledging that size provides advantages in many contexts while noting that advantages aren't guarantees, that understanding of leverage and anatomy can overcome size differentials, that training for aesthetics and training for function require different approaches. Derek Morrison is 78 years old now, his competitive bodybuilding days decades behind him, his massive physique long since diminished by age and the natural muscle loss that comes with time. But the lesson he learned at Muscle Beach remains fresh, guides his life and his teaching, shapes how he understands physical development and human capability. I was wrong about everything, Derek tells me as our interview concludes. Wrong about size equaling power, wrong about muscle mass providing dominance, wrong about bodybuilding representing complete physical development. But more fundamentally, I was wrong about how to treat people who are different from you, how to respond to what you don't understand. I insulted Bruce because he was small, because he was Asian, because his approach to physical training differed from mine. I assumed difference meant inferiority. Bruce showed me that difference often means superiority in areas I hadn't considered. That lesson, that recognition that my assumptions were based on ignorance rather than knowledge, that changed everything. Derek walks me to the door of his gym, shakes my hand with a grip that's still strong despite his age. "Tell Bruce's story," he says. "Not the legend version where he's an invincible superhero. Tell the truth about who he really was, a man who had every right and ability to destroy people who challenged him out of arrogance and ignorance, and chose instead to teach them. That's the real mastery, not the techniques, though those were extraordinary. The character, the wisdom to know when destruction serves no purpose but education serves everyone." I leave Derek's gym carrying the weight of his story, the story of a bodybuilder who couldn't have been more wrong about size and strength and dominance, who learned through humiliation and generous teaching that muscle without understanding is just meat, that looking powerful and being capable are entirely different things, that true strength includes the humility to recognize your limitations and the wisdom to learn from anyone who can teach you something true. 50 witnesses at Muscle Beach in 1967 saw Derek Morrison insult Bruce Lee and learned what happens when certainty based on ignorance meets knowledge based on decades of dedicated study. They saw 245 pounds of championship bodybuilding muscle get systematically dismantled by 135 pounds of functional martial arts mastery. They saw ego meet wisdom and ego lose completely. And they saw Bruce Lee choose teaching over destruction, choose patience over revenge, choose to expand someone's understanding rather than crush their spirit. That choice, that demonstration of character alongside physical capability, that's what made the encounter significant beyond just another demonstration of martial arts versus size. Derek Morrison was wrong about everything he believed about strength and power and physical dominance. But he was given the gift of learning just how wrong he was, and the teacher who showed him was generous enough to help him rebuild his understanding on something real. 57 years later, Derek carries that lesson still, teaches it to others, lives it daily. That's what couldn't have been more wrong means. Not just incorrect about specific facts, but fundamentally mistaken about core assumptions, building an entire identity on beliefs that reality contradicted completely. And that's what generous teaching means. Not just correcting errors, but helping someone rebuild understanding. Not just showing gaps, but offering knowledge to fill them. Not just destroying ego, but helping construct something more honest in its place. He couldn't have been more wrong. And Bruce Lee showed him exactly how wrong while offering the path to being right. That's the story Derek Morrison needed to tell. That's the lesson Muscle Beach needed to learn. That's the truth about Bruce Lee that matters more than speed or power or martial arts mastery. His character, his wisdom, his understanding that true strength includes knowing when to destroy and when to educate, and choosing education even when destruction would be easier and fully justified.